happens when we welcome change. We can make emergency medicine possible at 40,000 feet. Instead of burning our past for power, we can harness the energy of the tiny electron. We can create new ways to connect. Rethinking how we communicate to be more inclusive than ever. With app, cloud, and anywhere workspace solutions, VMware helps companies navigate change faster. VMware. Welcome change.
A different future starts with you. That's why GoDaddy does more to help you find a name. You can create, sell, and get found online, so any small business could be a driving force to create change or build an empire. We know old ideas aren't cutting it anymore, so we're calling for a new generation of thinking, your way of thinking. So whatever you have in mind that will help make a different future, find everything you need to get started at GoDaddy.com. Because the future isn't decided yet. It's up to us to make it happen. Start different at GoDaddy.com.
Today, I've taken it to the streets to give people the good news. Oh, excuse me. Hello. I'm Flo from Progressive, and did you know...
No, I'm just waiting for the bus.
So then you have time to hear about how with HomeQuote Explorer, you can check if you're paying too much for home insurance.
Yeah, if I was interested in talking to you, which I'm not.
Okay, I'll do the talking, and you just check if you can be saving, which it's going to be pretty hard to do if you put on your headphones. Okay.
See if you're paying too much for home insurance with HomeQuote Explorer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations.
The sound of a dad at Lowe's is the sound of a happy dad. This Father's Day, get a great value on the Craftsman 20-volt cordless 2-tool combo kit, now $99. And the American Gourmet by Char-Broil 2-burner gas grill for $118. You have to hear it to believe it. This Father's Day, let dad loose at Lowe's. Home to any budget, home to any possibility. While supplies last, Craftsman combo kit offer valid 6/10 through 8/4. American Gourmet 2-burner gas grill offer valid 6/10 through 6/23, U.S. only.
I think this is a new low for this crowd. They now are part of the insurrectionist mob. They brought enormous disrepute and dishonor on themselves in not honoring the brave men and women who defended the capital of the United States, everybody in it, but also defending the symbol, democracy in the world, not just here in the United States. Shameful moment.
Shameful is one way to describe what happened yesterday. Disgraceful works pretty well, too. We'll start with the good. The House yesterday passed a bill to award congressional gold medals to honor those who protected the seat of our American democracy from armed insurrectionists in January. 406 American lawmakers voted in favor of the legislation. But again, shamefully, 21 lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, did not. These are their names on your screen. One of them is named Paul Gosar. He's called the Peaceful Patriots. And he spent the rest of his Tuesday grilling FBI Director Christopher Wray over the identity of the officer who fatally shot a woman trying to leap through a Capitol window. Gosar said, without evidence, that officers were lying in wait for her, that it was an execution. It's a distortion of events, part of a larger Republican effort to dramatically whitewash the events of January 6th. Joining our conversation, NBC4 Washington correspondent Scott MacFarlane, Frank Figliuzzi, and Shirley Sykes are also. Tell me about the reaction to this not being a unanimous vote to reward the men and women who gave with their body that American lawmakers didn't give with theirs.
Nicole, there was a lot of frustration. Not a lot of surprise. Among those 21 names, some of Donald Trump's most ardent supporters, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, as you mentioned, Paul Gosar. But I spoke to another one of those 21, Dr. Andy Harris, the only Republican in the delegation from Maryland. His was this otherwise commendable resolution was hijacked by Speaker Pelosi to continue pushing her claims January 6th was an armed insurrection. What's important that you know is in the written statement Harris gave me, he put quotes around the word insurrection. So there is this caucus that has formed and seems to vote against all things January 6th, even what seems, Nicole, to be non-controversial.
Shirley Sykes, we're not the only ones calling BS on the insurrection caucus. Liz Cheney is doing it as well, as is Adam Kinzinger. These are their tweets. Kinzinger first. You're sick, Paul, sadly. Truth is, Ashley was manipulated by people like you and breached an area and put lives in danger, despite being repeatedly warned not to. The real criminals are the liars abusing people for political power. Cheney adds this: on January 6th, as the violent mob advanced on the House chamber, I was standing near Gosar. I helped him open his gas mask. The Capitol Police led us to safety. It is disgusting and despicable to see Gosar lie about that day and smear the men and women who defended us.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're pushing back on all of this. Look, there is no bottom for these folks. And, you know, you use the term whitewash. I think we almost need to come up with a stronger term for what's happening. This historical revisionism, this retconning of what happened. And you know, on the right, you have all these multiple narratives that, no, it was not an insurrection. It was a peaceful protest. They were just tourists. Okay, well, it was a peaceful protest, and there were a few knuckleheads. No, it was a violent insurrection, but it was Antifa, right? It was an insurrection, but it was, you know, brave patriots. And now they're moving to suggest that maybe it was a false operation that was designed by the FBI. I mean, the dishonesty nickels with the crazy here, but the overall theme is to try to make people forget and downplay what happened and what we saw in real time with our own eyes. And it is interesting that this sedition caucus would go so far as to vote against this resolution, which shows you how this has become a litmus test on the Trumpian right, at least in elements of the Trumpian right, that you have to deny not just the reality of the insurrection, but you have to deny the heroism of the men and women in blue who laid their lives on the line. And we ought to at least underline the irony here. This is a party that claims that blue lives matter and that has wrapped itself in pro-police rhetoric and symbolism. And yet when it comes down to this particular moment, they are not willing to stand with the men and women in uniform who lay their lives down and tell democracy.
And Frank, you know that they know it's BS as well. And they're doing exactly what Kinzinger and Cheney say they're doing. They're lying to their supporters. If they actually thought there were any chance that as the facts were revealed, they would reveal that Antifa had anything to do with this or the FBI, why wouldn't they be the ones pushing for a commission to investigate?
Yeah, this is about preservation of power. They're going to do whatever they need to do to get reelected, stay in power, and stick with the base as long as Trump remains the primary influencer over their party. That's simply what's going to happen. Look, I can't, from my national security perspective, I can't let this opportunity go to not point out that as recently as today, Vladimir Putin at his press conference regurgitated the very same message that we have U.S. congressmen sending, which is that the people that breached the security at the Capitol were simply looking for their political voice. They were simply looking for some political solutions. Vladimir Putin said that today at his press conference, and these members of Congress who refused to honor for bravery the Capitol police officers who protected those members of Congress are echoing the same thing as Putin. It's becoming difficult to understand the difference between whether it's the message started in Moscow or the message is coming from the GOP, but it is one and the same. Interesting, Nicole, that the very same members of Congress who will look the other way when a police officer is accused of brutally beating or murdering a black person through excessive use of force and will vote against any attempt at police reform will immediately call it an execution if a police officer protecting the democratic symbol of our country has to use deadly force against a white domestic terrorist. Seems something is incongruous there.
Well, and it's beyond incongruous and hypocritical, and Charlie used the word ironic. I mean, let me ask you, Scott, I mean, do the law enforcement officials themselves have any theory on why the Republicans don't want to award them for sacrificing their bodies? One was mutilated with a flagpole, another lost a finger, people had heart attacks and were tased. I mean, why did they think 21 Republicans didn't think they were worthy of any sort of award for bravery and sacrifice?
It's a great question. The officers who are speaking out, including injured DC officer Michael Fanone, are very much questioning how this is possible, how any member of Congress can question what happened that day or the violence of what happened that day. But here's a point to add what Frank said. Some of this is manifesting itself in the criminal cases. Just today, a defendant named Stephen Randolph of Kentucky was allowed free from jail by the judge. His attorney repeatedly kept calling it the January 6th event. Almost caught herself from saying insurrection, using the phrase event to paraphrase what actually happened that day. Ultimately, that was part of a successful argument. She secured his release till trial.
It's amazing. Scott, thank you so much for staying on this story and for spending time with us, bringing us your great reporting. I want to turn now to the pressure building on the ex-president through the investigations based in New York. Donald Trump's longtime chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, could be facing charges as soon as this summer. People with knowledge of the matter are telling the New York Times that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office appears to have entered the final stages of a criminal tax investigation into Weisselberg. Prosecutors are investigating whether he failed to pay taxes on thousands of dollars of benefits Trump provided to him and his family over the years. New York Times reports that prosecutors have obtained Mr. Weisselberg's personal tax returns, providing the fullest picture yet of his finances. We're back with Frank Figliuzzi and Charlie Sykes. Frank, I want your sort of view from an investigative standpoint. Is this about charging Weisselberg, or is this about maybe running up against a brick wall in terms of getting him to cooperate? So once you've been charged with whatever counts of felony tax fraud, perhaps you're more cooperative.
Yeah, this could be a little bit of both. And here's what I mean by that. The fact that the reporting's indicating that they're getting closer and closer to an indictment, and perhaps even in the weeks or months ahead.
You're watching Investigation Discovery on Demand. In Arizona, police battle a gunman with nothing to lose. First shot goes off. He keeps going. Boom, 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 boom. I did not know where he was shooting from. I think about my son. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't leave my son behind. I gotta make it through this. In Ohio, a violent offender turned turns the tables on police.
I honestly thought I was going to die. Because all he had to do was pull that trigger and there was nothing I could do.
And in Wisconsin, officers try to take out a shooter before he can kill his own co-workers.
This is the real thing when people's lives are at stake. That threat needs to be stopped immediately.
Williams, Arizona, a town of about 3,000, known as the gateway to the Grand Canyon. Williams police officer Robert Anderson is testing a service weapon with a mounted camera when a call comes in from dispatch.
We have a subject out in the woods somewhere. I've been on the phone with his mom. He is threatening suicide, does have weapons.
The dispatch lets us know that there's a suicidal subject and he possibly has a firearm, several firearms, including a shotgun, and they're trying to locate him. The subject is a man named Joel Gutierrez. Officer Anderson begins his search and switches on his body cam.
I knew who he was because he actually hands out newspapers. I see him at the gas station. We talk a little chit chat here and there, see how things are going. He drives in that black Trailblazer, but I know that he drives all the time.
Confirmation on the vehicle is the black Trailblazer. And family dividing, he has a 12 group and a 45 with him.
We have to locate him. And we don't want anything to take place where actually, say if there's a shooting taking place, we don't want any innocent bystanders getting hit. We were being told that they're pinging his phone. It gives us where that phone is located.
And be advised, the ping was a no-go. There's no GPS on the phone. The only thing that they got was that it was pinging off the 1000 North Airport Road Tower, about 1.22 miles south to southwest of the tower.
The cell phone tracking narrows the search to woods near a golf course. Officer Anderson and several other officers scour the area, hoping to stop Gutierrez before he hurts himself or anyone else.
So we're basically going off of where that last ping with the cell phone is.
Going back on the phone with the mother again, he was advising that his officers still are being left now.
And it's very nerve-wracking because anytime you're trying to find someone who is possibly suicidal, there's a possibility that the person may become agitated when they see law enforcement. So if I do see this person, I would have to position myself in a way where if he does get out and start shooting, I can backtrack and get myself to a safe location. Police 4 and code 4, that vehicle has vacated the area. Not sure where. We checked everywhere in the golf course area, and we could not find them.
With the subject still at large, police widen their search.
It's a large area that could possibly be. We start to regroup to kind of figure out, okay, what's the next course of action?
Oh, man, what's happening on in your world? Dispatch radios through with an update.
We're trying to figure out if his girlfriend was with him, because we're trying to call her as well. And because we couldn't hear from her, it's like, okay, something's not right. My thought process is that maybe he had killed her and killed himself. He does live in town. It is possible that he actually drove back to his house. But I knew where he lived, right behind the post office. I'm gonna check that apartment. I have a bad feeling on that.
Officer Anderson heads to Gutierrez's apartment, while other officers continue to search the woods.
find out something. So at least if I can get to that household, then we can eliminate that he's at that business. Taking my time now. I want to approach the home in a safe manner because we still have a suicidal subject with firearms. Anything can happen. I actually drive into the alley slowly, checking the area, and lo and behold, there is the black trailblazer. So I actually stopped immediately. I have the trailblazer here. The only thing I can do at this time is be patient and wait for backup to come and holster my firearm. According to what we were told, he has a few deadly weapons. Right now, I see all the blinds are closed. Now, we don't know who's in that home at this time. His girlfriend may still be in danger. See, go ahead and try that girlfriend's phone number again. See if you can get any kind of contact. I am alert. Why, since I'm looking around, I'm checking everything. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's in the apartment. At any point, he can come around the corner. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where is he? There was a sense that I was like a sitting duck. He could have been hiding anywhere.
Detective Jerry Wilson joins Officer Anderson outside the apartment, along with two sheriff's deputies.
So I want to get somebody on that side. See if you see from that angle.
The deputies take up positions at each corner of the apartment.
We're positioning ourselves to see the door and the window, to see if we can see at least one of the sources attempting to make contact. Both were hitting negative results on making contact with him.
We just for the girlfriend, we're trying to make contact as well. She does live with the subject in question at this time. And she makes sure she might still be in there also. The only thing at this time we could do is continue to keep calling, continuously calling the phone. Where is she at? Because she not answering her phone either.
Okay, we don't know where she's at.
No, that's the issue. We don't want to make sure she's not hurt or deceased.
Police make crucial contact with Gutierrez's girlfriend.
We have the girlfriend here on First Street. She's not with the subject.
He confirmed she's fine, she's good, she's all right. Which was a relief. That right there was a relief. Like, oh, good, thank God she's not there. We can deal with that now. Okay, that's good. So we should know if he's in the second story or the first story of the home.
All units, just to advise, girlfriend informed me that apartment is all upstairs.
Copy that. That made up things a little bit more serious.
That's when we start, Officer Anderson and I make the determination, hey, we're at a disadvantage because he's now elevated.
A Williams police detective is still trying desperately to contact Gutierrez, but there's no answer. All Officer Anderson can do is keep his eyes on the residents.
I was standing outside of the B pillar of my patrol vehicle where I can actually see the second story window. And I'm there, I said, well, I know if I can see that, if I can see him, he can see us. I reholstered my firearm and I retrieved my AR because I have a little more firepower. What's that blind? You see a figure actually open the blinds. That's gotta be him. Yeah, blinds open. He knows where we're standing. I don't like where we're sitting right now. Up top. Especially if he has firearms, he can basically shoot us more than we can shoot him. So we backed up. The only thing that came to my mind was we might have to shoot it out.
We're just preparing for the worst at this point. Speaking of the lines, this is off.
Okay.
You say I got a crack in my windshield.
And Lisa, maybe less heartbroken. Geico lets you file a claim any way you want. Are you crying?
No, there's pollen.
Geico.
No one, it's just one flavor.
Wayfair has the appliances you need to make homemade taste so much better. Make your to-do list disappear with help from the brands you trust, and make your life simpler with flexible financing and installation services. However you make it work for you. Wayfair.
Starbucks Triple Shot Energy. What gives you energy?
If you want to look good and not big money, you better give me that.
Hey, dirty, baby, I've got your laundry, don't you worry. Hey, baby, I've got your laundry. Hey, dirty, baby, I've got your laundry, don't you worry. Hey, baby, I've got your laundry.
The new LG Wash Tower. Redefine laundry in half the space. Oh, come on. We will find you do this. No one is a finger on your butterfinger. In Williams, Arizona, police officers are pinned down behind their patrol cars by a gunman named Joel Gutierrez.
First shot goes off. Wow. And we get down. It's going. Boom, 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 boom.
I have moved back to my vehicle. I now pull my rifle out. I was afraid. You see him? You see him?
I don't know where he is.
You got visual?
I did not know where he was shooting from. I stayed down and waited. I'm thinking he's gonna rush out and come around that corner, and I'm not gonna be fast enough to shoot.
We are preparing for him to fire again. You see him? We don't know if he's doing a reload on the gun. You see him? I was concerned for myself. I was concerned for Officer Anderson.
Officers try and determine whether their colleagues are unharmed.
Which one comes forward just behind my vehicle? I think my vehicle was might be hit. I think about my son. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't leave my son behind. I gotta make it through this. I will make it through this. I have to stop dancing, stay on the job, stay focused, make sure everyone's okay, get back in it.
But then, in the blink of an eye, the situation changes.
Sergeant Weigel then advises us over the radio that he has made contact with Mr. Gutierrez. He convinces him to come out and surrender himself.
Nope. I had my weapon up, just to protect myself just in case it was a trip. Sure enough, I do see him coming through the parking lot area. And that's when I start to make commands to him.
Stay right there, Howell. Stay right there. Get on your knees. Get on your knees.
Well, I still have my rifle drawn.
Hold right there. Howell, stand up for me one more time. We haven't moved back further, and now the deputies have also moved up from the side.
I got lethal.
So they're on my left side, and Anderson's on my right side. They're all covering me. Hey, my boy! Keep walking! Get down on your knees! Don't move! Once he was secured and handcuffed, he was then secured in the back of Officer Anderson's vehicle.
After everything was done, the scene was clear, everything was contained, then everything started to dump. I started calling my family. I'll call my mother. Hey, Mom. It's a guy shot up my vehicle right now. Just let you know I'm okay. Just trying to calm down a little bit. It was still difficult to know what just transpired before my very eyes and what I was involved in. I could still hear the gunshots going through the glass, going through the vehicle. I really didn't know how many rounds were shot. I thought it was only five. I counted 5 rounds when I heard it. When I come around on the inside of my patrol vehicle, they see that I'm like, that's more than 5 shots.
Officer Anderson's vehicle was hit 14 times.
There's a bullet hole in the windshield just before the shots rang out. Officer Anderson and I were both standing right in that doorway. And that was a big eye-opener because I had no idea where the bullets had impacted.
Anytime your life, when someone is trying to take your life or being close to your life being taken, it's a traumatic event.
In court, Howell Gutierrez claimed he wanted officers to return fire and kill him. He was given 13 years for 2 counts of assault and 1.5 years for criminal damage. Officer Robert Anderson received a Medal of Honor for his actions that day and returned to patrol.
It was like, wow, thank you very much. But I wasn't looking for any award at all because this is what we do.
Englewood, Ohio. Super Bowl Sunday 2017.
I came on duty at 11 a.m. I'm thinking it's not going to be a very busy day at all. Most people will be inside watching the game. I began patrolling the motels. We've had some crime through those. We found stolen cars, people with warrants. As I'm driving through those areas, I notice a male staring at me. Most people don't sit and stare at us like that unless they've committed a crime, about to commit a crime, or possibly have warrants for their arrest. So I decided at that point it's time to get out and talk with him. As I exited my cruiser to make contact with him, I activated my body camera.
It's totally fine. I'm not breaking the law. I stay in Motel 6, and now I'm on.
It's February. It's 40 degrees outside. He's wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. So he's not dressed for the weather. And at that point, I felt it was time to go ahead and identify him.
Okay. Do you have your ID with you so I can say you want to talk with? Do you have an Ohio ID?
began speaking with him, he's immediately standoffish. It was very clear he didn't want to talk with me. He did not want to provide any of the information that I was asking for.
We have to ID who we're talking to, okay? It's just for your protection just as much as ours, because if an officer did something illegal, that gives you the legal recourse to go back on that officer. And I can say, no, I spoke with Joe today, and Joe spoke with me, this is what we spoke about, and that was it. I mean, we're both covered. See what I'm saying? What is the name? I haven't seen you in a while, Lynn.
As soon as he provided his name, I immediately remembered him from an incident where he was arrested in a stolen car back in 2015. Where he had actually tried to kick out the back windows of a cruiser.
Last time I saw you, big deal. Much bigger deal, actually.
Mr. Porter has a violent past. He has some mental issues as well as he's an abuser of methamphetamines.
All right. Well, like I said, that's the reason I'm up here. Is because you were kind of hanging around there. Didn't look like you were staying there. You don't have a coat on. It's a little cold out here. So that's the reason. Okay? All right?
But after obtaining his information, there was no other crimes being committed. He wasn't a wanted individual. So at that point, I went back on patrol.
At 2:19 p.m., Inglewood Emergency Response gets a call from one of the motels.
This is Assistant Manager Dorian at Motel 6 in Inglewood. Can I have an officer around?
The caller reports extensive damage to one of the rooms.
And the housekeeper stated earlier the guest was walking back and forth and looking kind of awkward. They were due to check out today, and they're gone, but you need to make a report on this.
Officer Corcoran responds.
I responded to the hotel and found out that Shelley Porter had been assigned to the room.
A discarded ID card belonging to Shelley Porter is found in the room. It confirms that this was the same man Officer Corcoran had spoken to earlier that day.
There were 2 bullet holes in the window. A little bit of blood on the bed.
Both rounds struck the building on the opposite side of the parking lot. Luckily, no one was harmed. Shelley Porter had failed to check out of the hotel, meaning he was the only person with a key to access the room. It gives police probable cause that he was responsible for the gunshots.
Knowing the past history that I've had with Mr. Porter, knowing that he's had some issues with mental illness and drug use, which is a bad combination, we needed to find out a few things. Why did he fire rounds to the hotel room? Where did the blood on the bed come from? It put an uneasy feeling upon me. I continued through the room looking for any other evidence. Do I find some spent casings? I find some live rounds. One thing I noticed that I don't find is a firearm.
When it comes to doing business online, with Square, a website is just the start. You can turn posts into purchases and emails into sales. No matter how you sell, with Square, you can grow online and off.
At Domino's, we're constantly innovating to find better ways to deliver you pizza, which is why we're testing driverless delivery powered by Neuro, and it's got someone back to their old habits. Avoid the noise when you get any 2 or more medium 2-topping Domino's pizzas delivered for just $5.99 each.
New Kingsford pellets, 100% pure hardwood, 100% look at that. Introducing Kingsford 100% pure maple wood pellets.
Are the other kids up yet?
Just me. Frigidaire induction heats faster than gas or electric, and spills won't burn on. Wow. So it's a breeze to clean.
Bacon motivation.
That's using your Frigidaire.
At Jiffy Lube, it's our job to make car care make sense. With personalized service reviews that swap the car talk for straight talk, so you know what your car is telling you and what to do about it. Putting you in the driver's seat of car care. That's a job for Jiffy. We're changing our look. We're changing to make a difference for a more inclusive future. The one thing we're keeping the same is our great rice. We're Ben's Original.
We, the people of Johnsonville, being an American family-owned company since 1945, wish to challenge a national tradition. Burgers and hot dogs? We think it should be burgers and sausage. Where hot dogs don't always taste the same, we make our sausage with 100% premium pork in dozens of full, juicy flavors. And isn't delicious variety the best part of freedom? So grill up some Johnsonville, America, because you can't even spell sausage without USA.
We face the world head on and we never hide.
Let's get to work.
That's what I'm talking about.
Rated PG-13.
In Inglewood, Ohio, police are searching for Shelley Porter, who is on the loose and possibly armed.
I decided it was time to find him, to find out what happened at the hotel and find out if he's still carrying a gun. Knowing that he liked the more secluded areas where there's fewer people, I began to search those areas. Anytime you're looking for somebody and you know that they're armed or possibly armed, and my biggest concern was if he encountered citizens, because you don't know what the person's going to do.
At 3:34 p.m., Officer Corcoran searches an abandoned building less than a mile from the Motel 6.
I see Porter walking between two buildings. As I exit my vehicle, I immediately draw my weapon, knowing he could still possibly have his weapon since we hadn't found it.
Get to the ground! Hands out! All right on the ground!
I remembered from 2015, he has a violent past.
I got him in England.
I call in to dispatch my location so I can get additional units there to assist.
We're back behind the 200s.
Clear back behind the 200.
I am in the basement, loading my car, doing my pre-work routine. Radio traffic comes over. I hear Officer Corcoran.
Back behind the 200.
So I quickly made my way to his location.
Detective Collins is joined by Sergeant Corey Fuller.
Hands all the way out! All the way out! Right on the ground! On the ground!
My heart's racing. It's beating out of my chest because we know that he's possibly armed.
Hands all the way out! Hands all the way out!
I begin to give him commands. He's following them somewhat. He does get down on the ground, but he's like trying to get up onto his elbows.
All the way out to the sides! Stay right where you are. I'll explain in a minute. I will explain in a minute. You stay right where you're at.
My plan at that point was to try to keep him at gunpoint, giving him the commands until my backup could arrive and we could take him into custody.
I'm going to talk to you about Motel 6 and all the property you left. Now stay right where you are. I'm done talking for the minute.
I know my backup's on their way, but how far away are they is always the question.
Keep those hands out where I can see them. Palms facing up. Palms facing up. All the way out. Keep your hands all the way out and palms spread up. Face your palms up. Don't get up. I'll explain it in a minute.
I didn't want to see anybody get hurt, so it was time to find out what was going on and, if necessary, arrest him for the shots that he had fired in the hotel.
Keep your hands where I can see them. I just talked to you and have them in. Hands out to your sides. Hands out to your sides right now. Right back down. Right down.
Begins to get up off the ground. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if he's going to reach reach for his weapon. I don't know if he's going to try to run away. So at that point, I switched to my taser.
Okay. One taste. Okay.
As I deployed my taser, I didn't get the effect needed in order to incapacitate him. And I immediately deployed the second cartridge out of the taser.
Okay, son, I got no taste. Okay.
One probe was in his leg, and he was trying to get that pulled out. So I continued to move forward to do what we call a drive stun, which is taking the front of the taser and placing it directly against the body.
Okay.
As I drop down to apply the drive stun, Porter grabs the front of the taser. At that point, I decided to let go of the taser and throw it off to the side and to try to go hands-on. It looked like a jackpot machine went off. All I could see was a bunch of ammunition. I saw a knife, 2 guns.
The muzzle of one of the guns can be seen here.
I feel that I'm in a fight for my life, knowing that there's 2 guns of his that are present and that he could reach for those at any time.
Officer Corcoran is on his own until backup arrives.
I just had to get where Officer Corcoran was.
At that point, he's standing over top of me, and he's got his gun out, and he's got it about 6 inches from my head, and he tells me, "Now you don't move." I thought about my family, and I decided I wasn't going without a fight.
Get away without going anywhere. Get to know the locals and sample the cuisine. Book a dream vacation delivered right to your door. Sometimes the greatest destinations aren't far away.
Game on. Level Select CBD is the brand athletes count on to stay in the game. If you're looking to keep active, there's no better choice than Level Select CBD. Start again, Carson. Go to LevelSelectCBD.com now for 30% off any product. Use promo code LEVEL30 at LevelSelectCBD.com for 30% off today. At Domino's, we're constantly innovating to find better ways to deliver you pizza, which is why we're testing driverless delivery powered by Neuro. And it's got someone back to their old habits. Avoid the noise when you get any 2 or more medium 2-topping Domino's pizzas delivered for just $5.99 each.
When you buy this tea at Walmart, Walmart can buy more tea from Marlowe's. Marlowe's can create new jobs. Jobs for people like James and Lacey and me. Me, I love my work family. Family here and home is my life. Life is better for us because of a job. A job created when you buy this tea at Walmart.
Hey, it's me, your skin. Help me maintain my moisture balance with CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser.
In Inglewood, Ohio, a violent, unstable felon has Officer Tim Corcoran at gunpoint.
I honestly thought I was going to die because all he had to do was pull that trigger and there was nothing I could do. That's when I reached for my gun. Porter's still standing over me with his gun pointed at me, and I immediately started firing shots. He ends up falling to the ground. I didn't know if I had actually hit him. That's when my backup got there.
Let me see your hands! Show me your hands! Show me your hands, sir! The gun's in the road. The gun's in the road. Show me your hands, sir! Show me your hands!
Your adrenaline's still running very, very high. Your heart's beating through your chest at that moment. And you just have a million things going through your head.
I talked to him for a brief moment and I kept my foot between the gun and him. And he wasn't in a position where his arm would have reached in.
He's an expensive.
I motioned for the medics to come in.
Let's go.
Trying to have the medics do their job and give Mr. Porter the best care possible.
While resisting arrest, Porter is shot 7 times. He is rushed to the hospital, but dies later that day from his injuries.
I do wish that we could have ended it differently, but unfortunately we couldn't. I was concerned for the citizens in the area, knowing that he had fired a shot in the hotel.
The police investigation confirms that the spent casings and ammunition found in the damaged hotel room matched the firearm that Porter had held to Officer Corcoran's head.
Experience that I've gotten from it, it's gone to show how quickly something can go from just your normal day-to-day to the worst of the worst. It puts a different twist on it, on how short your life could be, and to make sure you make the most of every moment that you get.
350 miles away in Middleton, Wisconsin, law enforcement's worst nightmare is coming true.
Middleton units receiving multiple calls for a possible active shooter. Continuing further.
At 10:26 a.m., multiple 911 calls come in from an office park. A man is shooting at his coworkers.
Callers advised that they heard multiple gunshots. One person said they did see somebody with a gun.
A caller has seen the gun on CCTV. He appears to be hunting for victims.
September 19th is a date that we had planned for and trained for, but hoped would never happen.
Officers from all over the county race to the scene.
This is a terrifying scenario. A large number of people can be killed in a short period of time.
Officer Richard O'Connor is one of the first to respond.
I didn't think it was real immediately. There has to be some other explanation for it because this sort of thing doesn't happen here.
O'Connor's body cam captures the scene as he pulls up.
I get out of my squad car. I don't see anyone, I don't hear anyone. There's no stimulus. Nothing telling me where to go. And I'm looking, I'm scanning around. I have to move slow because I have no idea where the suspect is. It's an uneasy feeling.
Officer Tyler Lather races to the other side of the building.
I got info that he's in the back of the building.
Familiar with the address, I know that there's a back access way and a back employee parking lot, and that's where I drive up and drive through to get to that back area where I believe the shooter is still at. I see two other officers coming my way. We immediately decided that we needed to enter the building. We believed the shooter might still be inside.
O'Connor's radio picks up Tyler Lather.
West side. They're going in on the other side, the back side. There's cars, hundreds of cars in the parking lot. So, in my mind, the shooter could be in between any one of those cars. He could be behind any one of those windows, in any one of the bushes. I don't know where to go.
I'm craving
Wings. Frigidaire's range lets you air fry right in your oven. It's all the flavor, none of the guilt.
so good.
That's using your Frigidaire.
If you want to look good and not be funny, you better give me that. Baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Baby, I got your laundry. Baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Baby, I got your laundry.
The new LG Wash Tower. Redefine laundry in half the space.
Starbucks Triple Shot Energy. What gives you energy?
When it comes to doing business online, with Square, a website is just the start. You can take appointments and take orders. You can turn posts into purchases and emails into sales. No matter how you sell, with Square, it's all connected. So you can turn potential into reality and grow online and off.
At Jiffy Lube, it's our job to make car care make sense with personalized service reviews that swap the car talk for straight talk, so you know what your car is telling you and what to do about it. Putting you in the driver's seat of car care. That's a job for Jiffy.
New Kingsford pellets, 100% pure hardwood. 100%, dang, that's good. Introducing Kingsford 100% pure hickory wood pellets.
Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
In Middleton, Wisconsin, officers are hunting for an office worker who has opened fire on his colleagues.
23, I'm with a deputy on the front side of the building. You want us to come around there or wait here, Troy? What it feels like is every step I take could be the wrong step. I've gone from 100% sure where to go to 0% sure, and that's not a good feeling at all. It's this yellow building here. There's officers going on the other side. What's going on this side? When it becomes clear where I need to go in, it actually starts to feel more natural. Now I know exactly where to go and what to do.
Officer O'Connor and Deputy David Lambrick head right for the shooter.
I can feel my adrenaline kicking in. I know this is the real thing and people's lives are at stake and that threat needs to be stopped immediately.
Deputy Matthew Earl is right beside them.
The three of us press forward to the front entrance of this building. I look at Rich O'Connor and told him, cover me, I will open the door. It's one of those things that just you think about really quick. You know, what happens if I don't make it out here today?
We said they're in contact inside. And we don't know yet where the shooter is. And I hear a lot of commotion, a lot of yelling coming from our left. A lot of people are yelling blue. It's a way that we train to let other officers know we're the police. We're not a threat. Please don't shoot us. At this point, time has slowed down quite a bit, almost stopped. First thing I see about 100 feet away from me are officers staring at me. And I take a few more steps into the building, and then I see the shooter.
Drop that gun now!
On the other side of the atrium is Officer Tyler Lather, just a few feet away from the attacker.
After I come to the atrium and I pause, the officer to my left, within a few seconds, shouted, "He's right here." He had a handgun in his right hand, and he had the gun to his temple.
Police, drop the gun! He's got a gun to his head! Drop the gun!
Another officer's body cam captures Lather confronting the gunman.
There's nothing in between us except about 20 feet of space.
Get around the corner! Drop the gun! This way, get this way!
It's a terrible feeling, knowing that I don't have any cover. I don't have another option here, and I'm confronted face to face with a gunman that I know has already shot multiple people, and his goal is to shoot as many people as he can.
O'Connor, Lambrecht, and Earl have the gunman in their sights.
Drop it! Drop that gun!
He's way too close to the other officers. Even though he's pointing the gun at his own head, I know that he's still very much a threat.
I'm starting to feel anxious because we're talking with him for a long time, and I know that he can turn that weapon on us at any time.
He was mouthing something, but I could not hear what he was saying. I did notice that the individual was bringing the handgun away from his head, pointed towards my partners and I.
Drop it! Drop that gun! Drop the gun!
I see him extend his arm out toward me, and I hear a gunshot.
He's still alive! He's still out! He's sitting up shooting! Just sit still!
I can hear every one of my shots, and I can hear every one of his shots. There's a distinct difference in the sound of our guns.
Just sit still! Nobody move! I can't see him! I can't see him anymore!
The shooter is down, but officers don't have a clear line of sight. They don't know if it's safe to move in.
Let's move up to that. We gotta move up! We're moving up!
We have no idea if he's still alive, if he still has a gun.
Still moving.
I'm maybe 20 feet from the couch now, and I can see the suspect.
I can see his left hand.
He's laying on his back. He's got the gun in his hand. He doesn't look like he's moving. Doesn't look like he's alive.
Does he need any medical treatment? Is there any immediate first aid we need to do?
I understand that the fatal round went through his chest and went all the way through his body, and then eventually died.
The shooter is an employee of the company, Anthony Tong.
Sounds as though the shooter was in the business at his desk for probably an hour when, without warning, he stood up and began firing. And he had some type of mental health breakdown and decided to take it out on his work colleagues.
Tong shot 4 of his colleagues, but miraculously, they all survived.
One of the victims was shot 10 times, incredibly survived. Very serious wounds, not superficial wounds by any means.
Many of the officers who were shot at also had a lucky escape.
The shooter did fire multiple rounds through the drywall and toward that hallway that we retreated through. And fortunately, they hit a piece of thin, small metal trim. Had that not been there, the bullets would have penetrated through the drywall and come toward our location.
An investigation reveals that Anthony Tong should never have been able to get his hands on a gun in the first place.
This man was not legally allowed to purchase a firearm. But of course, there are loopholes in the law. In this case, he built his own gun.
The 4 officers who shot the gunman received honors for their heroic actions.
And very proud of all the officers that entered that building before the situation was under control. They were scared, and yet they did what they had to do.
All the officers have since returned to duty.
The active shooter situation is something we train for, we're prepared for. I'm prepared for it to happen today. It does.
Thank you for watching Investigation Discovery on Demand. You're watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.
In California, police face off against a knife-wielding bodybuilder.
Stop on me! He was just attacking the deputy. I had to do something to stop him. Wait, stop! There was no time to think about anything else.
A wanted criminal goes on the attack in a sex shop in Washington State.
I'm just trying to get away now. It's always scary when someone starts to actually fight you.
And in Florida, officers try to detain a man who is determined to escape
Stop! Stop!
at any cost.
I knew that he wasn't going to stop. He had every intention of plowing right through me or whoever was in front of me.
45 minutes north of San Francisco is the city of San Rafael, California. Around 9 p.m., Corporal Aaron Piambo of the San Rafael Police Department responds to a call about a car accident.
I drove to the location of the collision. I didn't see the vehicle that was involved. I continued to drive down an alley between a fast food restaurant and an auto body shop into a more industrial area. It was dark, just with the exception of a couple streetlights.
But there's no car accident. Instead, Corporal Piambo discovers an armed man.
I pulled up through the alley onto the main street. I saw a male subject off in the distance, and he was swinging his arms around. And as I took a second look at him, I saw he had 2 knives held in a downward position.
Hey! Drop the knife!
Training takes over, the need to handle the call takes over. I immediately called for more units to show I saw him.
Officer Mike Garrison arrives on the scene.
He appeared to be fighting with somebody who wasn't there. He was either under the influence of drugs or he was experiencing some kind of mental breakdown.
Drop the knife on the ground. Drop the knife on the ground.
Shift supervisor Sergeant Graham arrives next.
Based on what I was seeing, this incident was trying to resolve somebody with two knives. It didn't even correlate to the earlier call.
Next time, not that way, not that way. Take some more units, get a perimeter going.
Sergeant Graham begins to direct officers to close off the scene using their vehicles.
We're at a T intersection with multiple streets that need to be controlled and closed off. The inner perimeter is designed to keep the suspect contained where we can control him, and then the outer perimeter is designed to keep the public away.
The units come in from the Belvedere onto Verde for distance, watch for crossfire, but I need you to block off from Belvedere on Verde.
Officer McDougal and Deputy Rodarte block off the final entry point.
The area between us and the subject was a narrow street with walls and cars on both sides. There was no way to set an inner perimeter.
In such a confined space, the police can only create one line of defense. With the area surrounded, officers engage the man.
The first challenge was to establish some kind of communication to gain control. If you're not able to establish any kind of communication, you're just left reacting to their actions.
Keep going, Mike. Good job, Mike. Keep going.
Mike took over the communication when the subject acknowledged his presence. We were trained that you keep one person creating the dialogue with someone so it doesn't aggravate someone in that situation.
Sergeant Graham provides backup as Officer Garrison takes the lead.
The ideal outcome would be for the subject to put down the knives and to walk away from them so that we can take him into custody.
What's going on with you, man? What can I ask them for you?
I try to ask him grounding questions like, what is your name? Where are you from? Do you have any family in the area? Just something to bring him back to reality.
What money? $800 million? Okay.
You have to realize that the individual that you're dealing with is under the influence or suffering from some type of mental illness. Some of the answers that they're going to give you aren't going to make sense. But you're there to see if there's any way that we can help the individual.
So why don't you tell me your name so I can tell them whose money it is? Ali? Okay, Ali. So why don't you put the knives down and we can talk about the money? Ali, put the knives down and we'll have a conversation about the money, okay? Ali. Ali, we're not the FBI or CIA, we're the Central Investigative LPD.
It's very common with people who are extremely paranoid to start talking about the government. Nothing that I say is going to bring him back to reality.
As the standoff goes on, a crowd gathers.
People are seeing the police cars, people are seeing the lights. When you look over your shoulder, suddenly you have a dozen or more individuals who want to see what's going on, but are also putting themselves into harm's way.
I want the street clear. If he decides to run, I don't want anybody. Okay, all you guys, back. All the way to LaBelle Street. Leave. Leave. All the way out. Leave.
I realized somebody was inside our perimeter. I didn't know who he was or why he was there. It would have been very easy for the suspect to just start charging at him and be able to attack him.
Corporal Piombo orders the bystander to move on right away.
You need to take a knife.
Officer McDougal and Deputy Rodarte also have onlookers to contend with.
Hey. Hold out. Turn it up there.
Police police must keep their suspect inside the perimeter at all costs.
So we make sure we're clear here. It's not to break our perimeter. We're to keep him contained and use the reasonable force necessary to keep him contained.
By now, the standoff has dragged on for 20 minutes.
What we'd ultimately like to do is be able to either tire him out or at least get him to engage with us to find out what is going on and hopefully de-escalate the situation.
If you can start getting tired, let me know. I'll have someone else switch over.
That can get very tiring and very frustrating for anyone who's trying to communicate with someone, not getting the appropriate level of responses that you would expect.
Ollie, if you want to leave, you have to put the knife down.
As I'm talking, I'm asking him to put the knives down. He actually does. Puts both the knives on the ground. At that point, we felt that we have a glimmer of hope that this is going to resolve in a non-violent way.
Okay, so walk towards the knife. Walk towards it.
That lasted for about 2 seconds as he reached back down, picked up the knives, and then continued shadow boxing.
Ali, I can help you with this. You just have Ali, hey, Ali, don't go down there. Step over here.
I realized that he's no longer focused on us, that he's no longer paying attention to us. I thought that he was going to go down the street and try to harm one of our officers.
Ali, we're right in the face right now.
The suspect suddenly turns back.
We can't hear you. Don't let me hear him. Tell him to come closer.
After about 35 minutes, my brain was fried. I was running out of things to say, so I turned to Sergeant Graham and said I need somebody else to take over.
We weren't really getting anywhere, and I knew that can be very tiring for Officer Garrison. So what I wanted to do was have Corporal Piombo try to use a different approach.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ollie, hey, you had the knife down a minute ago, man. Let's put just one down for now. Let's start with one. Ali, put one down for us and keep the other one. All right, hey, look this way, man. You want a drink?
A good way to get someone to have their hands busy with something other than a knife is to have a drink in his hand or some food.
Who else do you think help you? No, they're not. We're here to help you, and we want to help you, but you gotta help us too. Ollie, hey, Ollie.
He's walking towards the person.
Ollie.
He stopped responding completely.
The suspect walks right at Officer McDougal and Deputy Rodarte. And these two officers are the only thing standing between the armed man and the public.
We only have two of us here. We need to know where the dog is. I wanted to ask for more help.
Stop, Ollie.
But by the time I finished that transmission, the subject was way too close to us to have any time to get any help at all.
Fairlife is ultra filtered milk with a capital but with 50% less sugar and 50% more protein. You can have delicious and nutrition. Fairlife ultra filtered milk.
Enjoy presentations in Canva.
So what do you think?
I'd go with the 9-iron and try to lay it up by the kiddies.
I like those.
Hey Charles, how's it going out there?
Good. Almost done with my list for bonuses. He's gonna like those.
It's your home, and Wayfair has the appliances you need to make homemade taste so much better. Make your to-do list disappear with help from the brands you trust. Make picky eaters master chefs, and make your life simpler with flexible financing and installation services. However you make it, Make it work for you. Wayfair, way more than furniture.
When it comes to doing business online, with Square, a website is just the start. You can take appointments and take orders. You can turn posts into purchases and emails into sales. No matter how you sell, with Square, it's all connected. So you can turn potential into reality and grow online and off.
If you want a little more than not be funny, you better give me that.
Baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Say hey, baby, I got your laundry. Hey, baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Say hey, baby, I got your laundry.
The new LG Wash Tower. Redefine laundry in half the space.
Sweet heat baked beans, man. Any night, and spicy.
In San Rafael, California, police officers face off against a knife-wielding man.
We had a perimeter where we had officers on opposing ends of the same street. It was a dangerous situation where the potential for crossfire is significant.
The suspect walks toward the perimeter, which is protected by only 2 officers.
Just we need to send someone down that alley or something.
But there's no way officers can follow him down the alley without putting themselves in a potential crossfire.
If we had followed him down that street, we would put the officer and the deputy in a position where they would be firing not only at the subject, but also at us.
Stop on me. Stop. Stop, man. I told the subject to stop at least 2 times. He didn't comply with my instructions.
Deputy Rodarte is armed with a less lethal beanbag shotgun.
He fired a 3rd round, which had no effect on him whatsoever.
Officer McDougal is forced to fire on the suspect. And this time, the ammunition is lethal.
Shots fired, shots fired. He was just attacking the deputy. I had to do something. There was no time to think about anything else. I took the action that I thought I needed to take to save that deputy's life.
It was an extreme relief to see that the officers were uninjured.
I have one in the chest and one that looks like a side shot. The right side.
I knew that the more that we could do prior to the ambulance and the paramedic units getting there, the quicker they would be able to treat him and get him to the hospital.
When we got the news that the suspect was going to survive being shot, there was a sense of relief.
I have to live with the fact that I shot somebody, but I don't have to go the extra step and say, and I killed him.
The knife-wielding man is former bodybuilder Faramars Agazadeh. He pleads guilty to obstruction and assault against an officer. Agazadeh was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months behind bars.
I was told later that he had been smoking methamphetamine that day. I also learned later that he had some personal issues that contributed to a mental health decline.
The last officer-involved shooting in San Rafael was about 19 to 20 years ago. The fact that we have not had very many officer-involved shootings is absolutely testament to our training and the ability of our officers to connect and engage with the community.
This incident taught me that you can't control every call the way that you want to. You can show up to a call and hope for a successful resolution, but in some cases, the suspect is going to be the one that defines the outcome.
Over 700 miles away from San Rafael is Spokane, Washington. Corporal Ron Van Tassel of the Spokane Police Department is patrolling the north side of the city when a suspicious driver catches his eye.
Suspect's on a side street, and he was at a stop sign, and as I was driving past, he just kind of gave me a look. Best way to explain it, it's very, very suspicious. I saw him then kind of sort of backed up down the street. Nobody backs up down the main road like that. And you just know deep down, it's like, all right, something's up with this guy. He'd only backed up a short distance from his car, and then he turned into the parking lot of a business right there. By the time I made it into the parking lot, I saw him actually walking into the store.
A security camera captures the suspect getting out of his car and heading toward a sex shop.
I had a visual of him, so there was really no rush for me to go and grab him at the moment. So I had stopped outside.
Corporal Van Tassel switches on his body cam.
He had a female passenger inside the car, and just kind of as I was walking by the car, I asked her what's going on and who he was. What's that? She was less than cooperative. She didn't really tell us what was going on at all. So I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere. So I So now I'm trying to figure out why. Why did he back up? Why is he trying to be evasive? So my next step was to find out who he was. I could see him in the store. My guard's always up when I make that initial contact with people. You just don't know what you're going to get. What do you want, man? Honestly, I didn't even recognize if his windshield was going to crack or not. So for him just to throw that out there immediately, it was a little suspicious. You know?
But if you want to write me a ticket, bro, you can. I'm going to do it right now.
He's driving the car, so he has to have identification. He said it was in the car, but I thought it was weird that he's now in the store supposedly buying something and he doesn't have his wallet with him. When he seemed very paranoid, I started noticing that maybe he might be under the influence of some sort of drug, narcotic, maybe some alcohol. So it kind of helps the idea of let's find out kind of what's going on with this guy. Which car is that?
It's my son's mother. Or my son's mother's wedding car.
About 10 feet behind him, there was a door right there to exit out of the store. The whole time in my mind was this guy's going to run.
Hello?
Coach, you're here. You're being paid right now. At one point, he tried to actually walk past me while he was on the phone. That's not something that normal people do. They don't try to just walk past the police officers when they're talking to them. You're being paid right now.
No, I got an officer here.
Hang up the phone.
Hold on a second, Mom. Man, will you step outside and talk?
I didn't want to go look in the car for his ID because I didn't know if there's weapons on the car. I didn't know if he was going to just jump in the car and try to drive off, or the second we hit the doors, if he was just going to take off running down the street.
Man, will you step outside and talk?
No, we're talking right here for a second. After you give me your name, which I'll say. I pretty much figured he had no intention of giving his name. I don't want to get in a foot chase with this guy. He's quite a bit smaller than me, a lot faster than me. So my goal was just to detain him. Okay.
This is Carson, sir.
No, I'm not the best one.
I'll give you my ID. Sir, this is wrong.
As soon as I grabbed him, I went backwards into the shelf of the store, which had, I don't know how you mean to put it, but it has a lot of personal lubricants on it, which all hit the ground, and we stepped on all of slippery. Both of us just kind of went back into the corner of the store and just kind of fell down on top of each other. When we went into the corner and he was laying on his back, I got hit with, his arm kind of in the forehead. So I knew that he wasn't just trying to get away. He's actually now hitting me and assaulting me.
Starbucks Triple Shot Energy. What gives you energy?
Can you bring up that data? I can show you this. Should we switch to scenario 7?
New Kingsford pellets. 100% pure hardwood. 100%. Dang. That's good. Introducing Kingsford 100% pure hickory wood pellets.
Jiffy Lube, it's our job to keep you moving. With a full range of services from oil changes and tire rotations to filters, wipers, and more, we've got what your car needs right when you need it, so you're ready for whatever's next. Putting you in the driver's seat of car care. That's a job for Jiffy.
We're changing our look. We're changing to make a difference for a more inclusive future. The one thing we're keeping the same is our great rice. We're Ben's Original.
In Spokane, Washington, Corporal Ron Van Tassel struggles with a suspect.
This guy's built a pretty good fight. And it's always scary when somebody starts to actually fight you and not just get away.
During the fight, Corporal Van Tassel's body cam is knocked off his uniform.
We're on the ground. Once he stood up, trying to run away. So I grabbed onto his back. And he actually kind of drug me across the floor.
With Corporal Van Tassel's body cam on the ground, the store's security cameras captured the fight.
We ended up at the front counter of the store. He was able at some point to grab onto the counter and kind of hold himself. About this point, I realized that the female passenger had exited the car and she was slamming on the windows and yelling and screaming. Once I knew that this guy was actually fighting and he was going to be a little bit of a handful, I got on the air and I requested code 6, which means I needed help.
Officers from across the city respond to Van Tassel's call for help. Corporal Ryan Jameson heads toward the store.
Officer Van Tassel doesn't put out code 6 very often, so when he does, it means that he does actually need somebody there right then.
Officer Eric Speck also responds.
The first priority is just to get there. It sounded urgent and that he needed more officers to assist him on it.
But until backup arrives, Corporal Van Tassel is on his own.
My goal is to just end this as quickly as possible. And it was at that point I actually put him into what's called a lateral neck restraint.
It's a restraint hold used in law enforcement across the U.S.
We We usually use the lead on neck restraint when somebody is being assaulted towards us or to other people. It slows the blood flow enough down to basically where you're making the person pass out. They wake up just a few seconds later and the whole incident's done and over with. I wasn't able to apply the move very well, and it wasn't affecting him at all. Next easiest thing I had on my belt was my taser. Tasers have two probes that come out, and both probes have to hit and have good connection for the taser to work. If one of the probes misses, the taser doesn't work. I decided to hit him in the lower back with it. Most people, as soon as that happens, they just hit the ground and they're done. It's pretty rare they're able to stand there and then function. So for him to actually do that, it was actually pretty shocking. And the whole time hoping that obviously your backup's gonna get there quick enough to help. And I remember looking up, waiting for my backup, I could hear sirens, and then I saw the first police car go whizzing past us. At first, I thought the officer just didn't know where he was going. I realized when I initially requested for my backup, I had given the wrong place.
Officer Specht arrives at a different sex shop.
Well, I went inside the store and it was relatively very quiet. The store employees were curious as to why I was there, and I quickly asked them if they knew what was going on, and they did not know what was going on. There was a little bit of confusion at first as to where exactly he was. So we got two very similar stores within half a block of each other.
With his backup in the wrong place, Corporal Van Tassel is left to deal with the suspect alone.
I'm trying to avoid getting into a knockdown, drag out fight with this guy. So my goal is still to use the things I can use to get him into custody. So I was going to try the taser him again. I remember looking over and thought I saw an opportunity to deploy the taser, and so I shot it off. I saw one probe actually hit him in the upper body, but the other one hit his shirt that he had out, so I knew it wasn't going to work. Now I think of something else to do. I pulled out my baton and raised it up. I just had it out ready in case he came around the corner at me. I couldn't really do anything with my baton at that point. I was just kind of waiting again.
Every occasion with an innovative and stylish LG kitchen.
New Kingsford pellets, 100% pure hardwood, 100% look and impact. Introducing Kingsford 100% pure maple wood pellets.
Strip away what you don't want, like added sugars and preservatives. And what's left is the good stuff, the real fruit juices of Naked. Stripped down to naked.
We're here! Don't settle for the trips you've always taken. You can travel to new places and seek new adventures. All without leaving home behind. Travel differently with Camping World.
Get away without going anywhere. Get to know the locals and sample the cuisine. Book a dream vacation delivered right to your door. Sometimes the greatest destinations aren't far away.
We're here! Don't settle for the trips you've always taken. You can travel to new places and seek new adventures.
all without leaving home behind. Travel safe with Camping World.
Corporal Van Tassel is caught in a showdown with a man refusing to be arrested.
I was concerned that maybe he's still planning something. He's just looking for an opportunity. At this point, I think he was frantic to get away. And so what happened was Officer Jameson then came in through the front door.
My main concern is Officer Van Tassel. The suspect turns towards me and I'm between him and the door. He starts rushing towards the door and I go to chase after him.
As soon as he gets out the front door, he turned left and a police car came in from that direction. So he turned and tried to go back south. But at that point, two other patrol cars pulled in the parking lot. And the suspect just kept on running and kind of jumped over his car.
When I arrived at the store, the first thing I saw was the gentleman running towards the vehicle I was driving. He took a quick turn back towards the area of the store, and their biggest concern at that point is just to try to get the guy detained as safely as possible.
There's two other guys on scene that were both bigger than me, and then a couple other guys. And so it took all of us to grab him and just drag him to the ground at first.
Corporal Van Tassel's fallen body cam captures the officers from inside the store.
He was resisting and wouldn't give us his hands. He wouldn't cooperate. For somebody his stature and his size, he put a pretty good struggle. You figure there's 5 times his body weight on top of him trying to get him down. The officer suspect at that point got on top of him and did a lateral neck restraint.
I applied the technique. He was unconscious for a few seconds. His body relaxed, and we were able to put him in handcuffs.
The suspect finally gives officers his name.
This is Dominic Johnson. Dominic has 3 warrants.
We were able to run his name and find out he had warrants. He was obviously trying to avoid police contact for a reason. And that's usually the most common reason is because they have warrants for their arrest. The female passenger was also detained.
His passenger is charged with rendering criminal assistance. Both Johnson and Corporal Van Tassel sustained minor injuries. Johnson pleads guilty to assaulting a law enforcement officer and stealing a vehicle. He is sentenced to 4 days in jail and a $1,500 fine.
The beginning of this instance was not necessarily out of the ordinary. It's not uncommon for people to avoid us. People do that every day. What made it out of the ordinary was how much of a fight he put up.
At the western end of the Florida Panhandle is the waterfront city of Pensacola. Officer Sarah Barbosa has been a patrol officer in Pensacola for nearly 20 years.
I became a police officer because I thought it was a very honorable job. I've got a family and I've got kids to take care of, and they have always been my first priority. But being a police officer, I thought, even from a young age, that's what I want to do. Whether it's responding to wrecks or burglaries or someone's hurt, just going out and taking care of people.
September 8th, 2015. Officer Barbosa is working the graveyard shift.
Things can get a little bit more interesting on night shift. just because of the darkness, I think it's easier for people to run and hide.
Officer Barbosa's beat partner, who is now working undercover, receives a request for service.
The call comes in that there was an individual over at an apartment complex and he was bothering the mother of his children. He wouldn't leave. He continued to damage her property and essentially just continued to harass her.
The officers know this suspect all too well. His name is Deantawain Mitchell.
This is not the first time I've been called here. Mr. Mitchell has an active warrant. He has a violent past, and he ran from me a few weeks ago in a stolen vehicle. So I just need to be prepared for any situation that I might face.
Officer Barbosa and her beat partner arrive at the hotel.
We learned that he normally hung out at a certain hotel. We figured he was over there, so we went over to the hotel and started looking around. There wasn't any activity out front, and we knew that at the back of the hotel, there was only one entrance and exit. We drove our vehicles around so that we could walk in on foot and hopefully contain Mr. Mitchell.
Immediately as I'm pulling around the back of the motel and Officer Barbosa is directly behind me in her vehicle, I see Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell looks directly back at me, at which time he opens the door of the car on the passenger side and begins to enter the vehicle. The first concern in my head is whether or not he has a weapon on him. I get out of my car and begin shouting at Mr. Mitchell through the glass, to exit the vehicle, show me his hands, stop what he's doing. He's ignoring all commands.
The officers quickly realize that Mitchell is not alone in the vehicle.
I saw what appeared to be a fight going on in the front seat, and a man came barreling out of the driver's side and went running. The door quickly shut, and I realized someone else is in control of the vehicle, and he's fixing to run. The danger level to this had definitely been upped.
As the situation becomes more chaotic, Officer Barbosa turns on her body cam.
I started to do a 3-point turn in order to get out of the parking lot. He was coming in our direction.
I'm concerned about Officer Barbosa, who's behind me. I know that she's in the way.
The officers stand between the vehicle and the exit of the parking lot.
I'm yelling at him, stop, don't do it, I will shoot, hoping that Mr. Mitchell hears it and kind of comes to his senses. I noticed that Mr. Mitchell is committed and he's going to accelerate and strike Officer Barbosa. It's a vehicle coming at us at a pretty high rate of speed. At that time, I had to make a decision to use deadly force.
Don't do it! Don't do it!
McLaren is a lot to go with them.
They're betting on a new key partner to help get them there.
Late breaking, what do you think? Love it or no chance? Daniel, no chance. Let's put up a poll. Love it wins.
We need a part.
It's done.
Can you repeat that? That's better.
It's done.
With WebEx, the McLaren Formula One team is collaborating like never before. Introducing the WebEx Suite, driving hybrid work.
At Domino's, we're constantly innovating to find better ways to deliver you pizza, which is why we're testing driverless delivery powered by Neuro, and it's got someone back to their old habits. Avoid the noise when you get any 2 or more medium 2-topping Domino's pizzas delivered for just $5.99 each.
If you want to look good and not be funny, you better give me that.
Baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Say hey, baby, I got your laundry. Hey, baby, I got your laundry, don't you worry. Say hey, your laundry.
The new LG Wash Tower. Redefine laundry in half the space.
Starbucks Triple Shot Energy. What gives you energy?
When it comes to doing business online, with Square, a website is just the start. You can take appointments and take orders. No matter how you sell, with Square, you can grow online and off.
Officers have tracked down their suspect, DeAntoine Mitchell, to a hotel parking lot. He's in a vehicle, and he's desperate to get away from police.
Flying right through me or whoever was in front of him.
80 Mike Robertson. 80 Mike Robertson. Black. 4-door. Don't do it!
You could say my life flashed before my eyes, but I think it was much more of my children's lives flashing before my eyes because I knew I needed to get home.
Don't do it!
I remember thinking, this is going to hurt really bad.
Officer Barbosa's partner turns on his body cam and sprints after the escaping suspect.
Shots fired!
Northbound on Main Street from Travelhead.
One more time, wake it up, Cali as well.
Black male, all black clothing, black t-shirt, black shorts, Nikes with orange shoelaces. DeAntoine Mitchell. After all this and potentially severely injuring Officer Barbosa, Mr. Mitchell is a danger to the community.
Supervising Lieutenant Eric Goss picks up the frantic call.
As soon as it went out, I knew that it was something serious that happened.
He begins to coordinate the manhunt for Mitchell.
Something like this, it's a bunch of moving parts. It's controlled chaos. First and foremost, I'm trying to apprehend a suspect. He's already been shot at, possibly shot. He's driving a 4,000-pound machine, and whatever damage that could do. So that's the high liability.
As the rest of the team tracks Mitchell down, Officer Barbosa's partner races back to check on her.
Shots fired!
Everybody kept forward?
Officer Barbosa is laying on the asphalt of the parking lot. I couldn't tell if he ran over her legs.
He's gone.
Kept forward, everybody kept forward?
Yes.
I was able to jump out of the way at the last second. The vehicle actually missed me just by an inch or two. I wound up striking the back of my head on the concrete pavement.
This hurts. You can't see it, you have to feel it. That hurts. You!
Get on the ground!
I realized that there was someone else moving towards me, and it was actually the original driver of the car. He wanted to take off and go after the suspect.
I don't know what the driver's involvement is. They could be working together, they could be friends. He could essentially not want Mr. Mitchell to go to jail and help in whatever way he can.
What do you want me to do, man?
Why don't you just stand right here?
Pull off in my car. I told him to go.
Spread your feet.
I needed to verify at the time that this man was not involved in anything because we now had a crime scene.
And it's your car. That was my car. He tried to get me to drive. And I told him no, I'm not. He pushed me out. And so I jumped out because he didn't want me to get out. He wanted to just drive. But I wasn't going to stay in that car.
How do you know it?
He just asked me to take him to the store.
Never met him before?
I've never met him before in my life.
Well, as of right now, you just need to take okay? Watch your feet. the original driver of the car who got the car stolen from him by Mr. Mitchell.
It was evident that the driver didn't want any part of what Mr. Mitchell was doing.
With no leads from the man on the scene, the clock is ticking as the rest of the team tries to track Mitchell down.
Anytime somebody tries to run over and kill 2 police officers, they're bad news in my book, and they're a true danger to society.
Lieutenant Goss mobilizes the rest of the officers on shift. Officer Charles, an undercover officer, responds to the call.
Heard on the radio shots fired, immediately jumped in my vehicle and started heading towards the location. I get to East Street, I see a car fly across the intersection, almost striking another vehicle. And in my head, I'm like, that's got to be a car. It's coming from the area where he's driving. He's trying to get away from something real quick. I get up to the vehicle. I see an individual jump out of the driver's seat and run south into his backyard, jumping over fences.
That's where I got a smash that vehicle right over here. Jump on the truck rubber.
So I'm trying to catch up with this guy who's now got a little bit of a lead on me.
I got one line on that left street in E Street. They also faked out. He shouldn't have faked it. That boy's an old guy. He's all over. Thinking the yard here at A and E. I got nothing on there.
Officer Charles jumps a fence into a yard.
It's dark. It's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I'm in the backyard by myself. I realize that he's probably in this yard with me. My blood is pounding. I got that adrenaline rush. He's about to ambush me, jump on me, shoot me, stab me. There's a lot of things going through your head. Start clearing through that yard. As I look down at the ground, I see Mr. Mitchell at the base of the shed.
Lieutenant Goss and other officers race to the location.
Officer Charles had the suspect down on the ground. Once I got there, he was able to place him under arrest and do what he needed to do.
I was able to get those cuffs on. I still got to go and search him, but I've got control of his hands.
You need to stop moving right now.
Mitchell's injuries are bullet wounds from the earlier incident at the hotel.
He was bleeding from the arm, the hand area. I knew it wasn't anything life-threatening. So at that point, it was just about getting him secured and then calling for an ambulance.
Back at the parking lot, the officers get news of the arrest.
Did they catch the guy?
I think they did, yes, sir. Well, it finally came across the radio that they had captured Mr. Mitchell and he was in police custody, and that was a big relief. And unfortunately, that's when the pain started for my head.
Let's see that again. Are you cut or just bad?
No, I'm not bleeding. I just smashed the concrete really bad. As I had fallen, I struck my head on the pavement. I was just grateful that it didn't bust completely wide open.
The owner of the vehicle was interviewed later by police and released.
It was clear that Mr. Mitchell had one intention. He was going to get away however he had to. I think if Officer Barbosa hadn't gotten out of the way, she would have been severely injured.
I was actually very surprised that I didn't get hit. I knew in my heart he wasn't going to stop.
DeAntwayne Mitchell is charged with 2 counts of assault on a law enforcement officer, fleeing the police, and 1 count of carjacking. He's sentenced to 12 years in prison.
I don't think things like this have made me question being a cop. It's something I've always wanted to do, and it's something I know I will always do. What really matters is that I've made it home at the end of the shift, and I'm able to go home with my family.
Thank you for watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.